Sally Scranton from the Guide Dog Foundation, is that correct?
I'm a volunteer for them in Smithtown.
Okay, and so you're a puppy raiser?
I have been for 23 years.
23 years?
We've raised 21 dogs.
21 dogs. And how did you first get involved in it?
My husband and I had always had Labradors, and we put down one of our Labradors, and I pitched the idea that it would be nice to raise a working dog. And I guess I haven't looked back.
But you had Labradors, which I've had, and you thought right away you'd be able to let go of the dog after raising it as a puppy? Because that's, to me, I mean, you could see it there, but I mean, that's what I've always thought of is like, that must be impossible.
Well, it's the challenge for sure, but it's the deal you make when you sign on. And I think when you've invested, a year and a half of your life with a dog, you're trying to get it to the finish line. So it's, it's emotional. I get emotional watching this movie because I've had every experience that you've seen in the movie. And but at the end of the day, there are a vast number of people that need these working dogs, and not every dog can do it. I always say not every kid goes to Harvard, and that's so true with dogs. And we try to make the dog fit into the working life it can be successful in, and some dogs just cannot do it. And we also, our foundation also raises vet dogs as well. And I don't know if anybody saw today in the paper, but they had George Bush's vet dog sitting by his casket. And his dog's name was Sully also. Sully seems to be a hot name at the moment. And so it's, that dog actually, I read this morning, is going to be working at Walter Reed Army Hospital and living with a family.
That's unbelievable. So the first dog you had, what are the things they do besides socializing? Because I remember the town clerk Marietta Seaman used to raise dogs in Southampton.
Right, I know Marietta.
Yeah. And that's the first time I encountered a puppy raiser. And I asked her how she could ever let go of a puppy, and she said, "Well, if you've done it a few times, you sort of get into it. And as you say, it's a function. You're trying to get them to the finish line."
Right.
So when you took the first dog, and how much training do they give you in terms of socializing and training them, the initial training?
Well, now it's become quite intense. When I first started, I think it was a little more casual, and we would have periodically, maybe every 3 months, we'd gather at the Smithtown Guide Dog Foundation to have a class or something. I pushed the dogs to get out as much as possible. I tried to expose them to all kinds of situations out here, and this area is tremendously wonderful to raise a guide dog because people are very supportive of your activity. And every time I turned one in, everybody would say, "Well, when are you getting another one?" So I commend anybody that wants to take the task on, but you get far more back personally when it all succeeds. And we've had a number of dogs that have been made breeder stock, which and has really enhanced the program a great deal. We've had far more success with a very controlled breeding situation for our dogs. So the puppy, about 60% of our puppies become guide dogs, which is a pretty good statistic, but we feel it comes from breeding good quality dogs.
Right. So you're actually breeding them yourselves now?
No. The foundation does.
The foundation does.
I don't do that. Actually, Sully is the last puppy I raised, and he was put in the breeding program.
Okay.
So he will produce puppies for them for his lifetime and live with us.
Okay. So, yeah, I was going to ask you that because I saw that there was females that have gone into the breeding stock, but I guess they put males into the breeding stock as well. So
kind of works that way.
Yeah, no. I just know if they got outside males to come in and take care of business.
Well, they do. All the schools are quite similar. This school that was featured was in California, and they're very cooperative amongst each other because breeding stock is important to control and spread around. So it's possible Sully might be sent to California for breeding purposes for a period of time, but he will be based in Watermill.
Okay, well, that's unbelievable. So,
pardon me? Yeah, we do use Goldens as well. I feel like maybe I'm part Labrador and I understand Labradors, so I have always preferred to use them. I think they're tremendously resilient. We pass these dogs around a lot. You know, they go in the kennel, out of the kennel. They're with, you know, I've never surrendered a puppy, which I thought was interesting in this film, how they changed puppies if they felt they weren't progressing far quickly enough or whatever. But there's a tremendous, we ask a lot of them. And I've said before, not every dog can roll with all those changes, but I feel Labradors sort of are pretty happy. They love to be engaged. I think they generally like to work. So I always say every dog needs a job.
Are there Goldens in the breed stock?
Yes.
There are.
Yeah, we have Goldens, and we have standard poodles for blind people that are allergic.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you said it's gotten more intense since when you first started out. It was more sort of you go back and do a little training once a month, but
Right.
now what is there
It's
more?
2 classes a month are required. You try to give your dog as many opportunities as possible. I think over 23 years I've become a better puppy walker through the process. And it's just more, they give you more hints on how to cope with any potential issues that might arise. I think there's a lot more surveillance than there used to be.
Well, and the other thing is that you could see from that litter that the dogs all have different personalities, because I know from choosing Labradors out of a litter, and you can see the ones that's laid back and the ones that are really
Right.
aggressive and so forth. So not every personality is going to really fit the program. So
Right. Well, it's interesting. A working guide dog, the dogs are varied, along with the blind people are varied, and certain blind people love a really tough dog. It depends on what the working life is going to be. Is he going to be in the city? Is he going to be flying all over the world in a plane? Or you need a tough dog for that. And if it's a quieter life, they try to take all that into account. But primarily, it's all serious business because it's all about safety.
absolutely. So how many schools are there around the country?
I think there's 6.
6.
6, yeah.
And the staff for that has got to be, so there's professional trainers that are on
Yes.
staff to train, and the puppy raisers are volunteers,
Right.
but the
And we have
supervisory staff, and then the
We
breeding
have
staff.
puppy advisors for the puppy raisers, and we meet with them several times a month. And then they're called in to be evaluated. Oh, in Sully's case, he was evaluated about every 2 months because they wanted to see. Normally, they would have neutered him at 6 months, but they were holding him because of potential breeding. So he had a lot more examination, physical and I guess social as well.
So when did they decide that he was going to be a breeder?
They didn't decide formally until he was 15 months.
And was it because he wasn't able to pass certain tests, or was it because
No,
of...
they just they wanted to see how he would mature and develop and what his skills were. So.
Okay, so he never got the testing for guide dog?
He does. Oh, he gets the preliminary testing. He did. Yeah.
Okay, and then they
And
said...
then they tend to pick the best of what they have for breeding because that ensures the quality of the dog they're putting out.
Okay, so how many dogs have you had career changed?
Oh, I've had a few. I had one that had a heart murmur, a very young dog, and a friend of mine adopted her. She lived to be a ripe old age of 10, so it wasn't as critical. But any dog with even a minor health issue, they're probably not going to invest. It costs $50,000 to have a finished guide dog, and if there are any problems physically, they will take the dog out of the program. I had a half golden, half lab dog that had hip dysplasia, severe hip dysplasia.
I saw the hip tests going on with that.
He was dropped the day after his hip test. So he was adopted by a friend also. So we have a very aggressive adoption program. We have a program for retired guide dogs as well because they deserve retirement as well. And so that's been, we try to really put the dog where it will thrive.
Yeah, do we see a retired dog guide dog in the film? I thought.
Oh, the woman, the blind woman, kept her dog.
Right. That's right. After it was retired.
And Poppet was going to be her friend.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So you say $50,000 to bring a guide dog from beginning to
finished product.
Paired with a blind person.
Yeah, I think the movie really strikes a chord in me, because whenever I see a guide dog, I think all the people that took all that work to make that happen for that one person. So
Right.
it's
And it's personal for all of them, because even the professional trainers, they take it really hard.
Well, you can see that.
Well, because they bond with the dogs in different
Right.
ways and their personalities.
And the blind people, when they get their dogs, they're so nervous, and they want this dog to love them, and it's very interesting. Everybody's nervous. You're nervous with your puppy. You're nervous. Will it be a breeder? Will it be a guide dog? Will it do something else? You never know.
And do they always do that thing where the puppy raisers get to see the dog with the blind person at the end?
Yes, we go to graduation, and it is the one thing I will tell you is when you're there, that dog is not your dog anymore, and that's what you hope to see.
But it looked like the dog was very recognizing of the puppy raisers.
They do. They're
definitely
happy to
recognize them.
see you, but they are.
Now they're
They have a
connected.
job to do.
How long do the blind people, when they partner up with the dogs, how long do they stay at the campus to get their training?
2 weeks.
That's just 2 weeks.
2 weeks, but then we have after training that they'll send a trainer to their home environment. Actually, they'll do that before they place a dog with a blind person to see what his needs or her needs will be and what kind of environment the dog will be in. And then they come to the campus for 2 weeks, and then they go back home, and then there's aftercare after that.
And the nearest school for us is in Smithtown?
Smithtown, yeah.
Okay, and then the dogs, have you had dogs placed locally?
Oh, yeah. They go all over the world, though. So the last dog I did became a vet dog for a paralyzed veteran, and he's up in Nassau County.
In Nassau County.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so any blind dogs, guide dogs for the blind in the East End?
In Southampton?
Around the East End?
There used to be one in Hampton Bays that I was aware of, but I'm not sure if he's still there or not.
So the dogs are bred, and it said in the beginning of the film, it said that they were just whelped out, and it said their training will begin tomorrow.
I'm sorry?
It said their training would begin tomorrow at the beginning of the film, right after they've been born. Is that really
right.
true?
That's so true. It's the way we started initially in the nursery. We have people come in just to handle the puppies so they get used to being handled, and they have all those toys and surfaces, different surfaces for them to climb on. So you really do start at the beginning,
Right away.
and then when
As soon
I
as
get a
their eyes
puppy
are
at 8
open.
weeks,
It's at
we
8
go to
weeks. I
work.
was going to ask. It's at 8 weeks?
We get them at 8 weeks, and we go to work.
Oh, that's unbelievable. So 21 dogs you've done? Mm-hmm. And how many made it through, made the cut?
I think I've had 6 breeders, 6 breeders, and 10 guide dogs.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And so can anybody do this? Any of us here that wants to do this?
We love to have people do it. It's a huge commitment. I won't sell it short that it is a huge commitment. We try to do everything we can to help you get through this process. And if you travel, you can board your dog at the Guide Dog Foundation. And they come, if there are enough people on the East End, they do classes out this way, so you're not schlepping up to Smithtown every time. But yeah, it's a worthwhile, interesting way to spend your time.
And how do people do it? Do they go to Guide Dog Foundation for the Blind, and then they'll be
Yeah, there's a
funneled to Smithtown?
website. I have all kinds of information if anybody wants to look into it, but you do apply to become involved, and you have to go and take a preliminary class. They'll tell you exactly what's expected, and you can see what the facility is like, and then you wait for a puppy.
That's unbelievable. Well, so if anybody wants to find out more about it, Sally, you can talk to them in the lobby after this?
Sure.
Okay, great.
Sure.
And so thank you so much for
well,
coming,
thank
and
you.
thank you for bringing Sully.